I actually have a random detail I want to start with you, Marto, just because I don't know if you saw this, but it just came out very recently. There's actually a little bit of drama around LTA and Team Liquid. Did you see this? It's not actually about
Oh,
League of
yeah.
Legends, it's about Team Liquid, the org, where basically, as far as I can tell, this was reported by Sheep Esports, like on their official account as well. They say that what's happened, as far as I can tell, I haven't followed this story, so I'm just going to give you the basic details here. People will know in League of Legends that Team Liquid for the last few years, because they're obviously a very successful org with sponsorships and partnerships, their main partner has been Honda, because it was obviously in the name. Remember, think of all those videos of the League of Legends players saying like Team Liquid Honda 1 million times to put it in your brain. Basically, it turns out, it appears that a Team Liquid Rainbow Six player, who I'm guessing based on his name is Brazilian, based on this story. If you don't know, Rainbow Six is huge in Brazil, a bit like how Counter-Strike is as well. And that is actually like, it's not one of the major esports to me, but it's in the next circle of like, the Rocket Leagues and the other ones that you put at the side, maybe Valorant's like between that and the big bump up. And basically this guy, after a game, has stupidly taunted, it appears, a Japanese player by using a GIF of the Hiroshima bomb exploding. Now, here's what's mad about this, Yamato. When I initially saw it, because it doesn't say any of that information in the original tweet, because guess what, Yamato? It was Sheep Esports reporting that. So they're not actually journalists, mate, so they wouldn't know, like, to give information, context. They just basically put, like, Team Liquid sponsor is leaving because of a thing about making fun of Japan. It's like, you haven't given me any information yet, mate. That's like the most large version of that description. So basically, here's the problem. I actually initially saw this, Yamato, and thought, oh, is this going to turn out to be one of those things where, like, someone gets in trouble for something actually harmless? Like, I'll give you an example. There have actually been examples in the past in sports, Yamato, where people got in trouble along, like, racial and social lines, where it was actually literally a misunderstanding. Like, I'll give you an example. When Serena Williams, the really famous tennis player, was like, it wasn't when she was at her peak, it was towards the end of her career. She was once playing, and a commentator explained, like, she's sort of using guerrilla warfare tactics, right? This is not a joke, Yamato. That commentator got into trouble because people complained he called her a gorilla. Now, you will know this. Those aren't even spelt the same. Those are two totally different words. I know they sound a bit like gorilla, the thing that's in the, like, King Kong or whatever, but it actually means like people who do guerrilla tactics, as in, like what the Americans did against the British in the Revolutionary War, you nip in and attack someone, then you run back out and you sort of like snipe at them, etc. So anyway, I thought, oh, is this going to be like that? Is it going to turn out that what actually happened was, because it didn't say this in the original post, is it going to turn out what happened is a player lost a match, he's gone on Twitter and he's thought, oh, fuck, the end of the world, innit? So what he's done is just done a gif of like, I'll just show like a nuke blowing up or whatever. It isn't that. It turns out actually, apparently he did that to taunt some Japanese player, which is mental. And the reason I bring this up, Yamato, isn't for nothing. It's because, one, apparently it looks like you're not going to see Team Liquid Honda anymore, unfortunately. Although I will say this, I have to add in a cynical like sidebar as someone who's been in the industry a long time, Yamato. I don't know that I actually believe that's why they dropped the whole partnership. That sounds to me like you might have put it this way. When Jojo Pion was in Cloud9, and it's actually because he fucked up and lost 100 Thieves and didn't go to Worlds that he like magically got cut for being late. But I've always thought if he at the end of that split had lifted the trophy and gone to Worlds, it wouldn't have mattered how many times he'd been late, mate. He'd still be in Cloud9 and everything would have been fine. I think what happens sometimes is you're looking for what you call a pretext to do what you wanted to do anyway. I imagine what probably happened is they signed that deal a few years ago when economics were different. And really it's more like, because you fucked up in this sense, which you have, if it's a Japanese company, you've made fun of a Japanese player using fucking nuclear bomb blown up in their country, that's a brilliant but potentially like just simple reason to end the deal anyway that maybe you wanted to do anyway. And lastly, I'll throw this in there. Another reason why this is relevant to bring up is because you don't get this very much in League, because unfortunately Brazil just hasn't been very good in League of Legends. Like, they barely ever had impact beyond those 2 BO1 upsets, 3 technically at the Worlds. They just, for some weird reason, even though their league's being very strong and they've had good players and even Koreans and like people like fucking Crown, somehow they just never translated it to being big enough. So because they're not actually successful enough, you don't actually have to interact with Brazilian fans that much in League of Legends. But I can tell you the reason why, to me, even though sadly it's Team Liquid that has to suffer, the reason why there's almost a karma to this, Yamato, is because you won't know this, and this might actually shock you, mate. You're going to think I'm exaggerating, but you know I don't exaggerate. Mate, it was actually a very famous thing that Brazilian fans do in esports, that if anyone who was basically Anglo, like they don't even know that me and Richard Lewis aren't American, mate. They just see people talk English and they think everyone who speaks English is an American, because look, they're think of their worldview of Brazil. They don't necessarily encounter Europeans as much. So what they would do for real, Yamato, is if we ever said something they thought was insulting about Brazil, like, their team isn't the best, they would make fun of 9/11. That was the go-to, by the way. As in, they would post like pictures of the planes going into the buildings, like stuff like "lol." Remember that? Even though the joke of it is, first of all, that'd be really out of pocket anyway if you were American. But it also just makes no sense to do it to like Richard Lewis because, he's from Wales, mate. Like that, there's not even a connection there. So anyway, I just think it's interesting karma because they get away with that because who are you going to complain to? But what they've done here is they fucked around someone Brazilian and not realised that only works on Europeans, mate. You try that on Japan, Korea. By the way, try it on Korea. You'll find out like that Johnny Somali guy, mate. Try fucking around with Koreans and see what happens then. You won't like the results, mate. I don't think you like. So I actually wondered, did you see this? It was kind of like a mad day. I woke up and saw it, like, what the fuck? It's kind of.
I was also surprised. I also was confused that they didn't like put why. I had to scroll down and see someone asking Grok or some shit. Yeah, I was like, come on, man. And then I checked player and I saw what it was, and obviously my first.
Yeah, by the way, Sheep Esports, you failed if asking Grok gives more information. Because all Grok does is search the internet, you fucking idiot. It's not an actual person who has any... That means you couldn't even use Google. So anyway, keep going.
Because I reached the same conclusion you did, I'm playing it simple. I thought it's like, maybe, I don't want to speak for how sensitive this topic is, but... I also, in my experience, it's like sometimes you look for a way out, It's like sometimes it's so hard to end a relationship, you got to move out, you have all your stuff there, it's tricky. It's like, you cheated on me? Oh, perfect. I can leave now, It's like, I'm the winner of this, I can leave. And from Team Liquid's side, it's just, I don't know what kind of impact this will have, of course, on finances, because in the end, it's like, Honda is like literally like it's the main sponsorship on the show,
That'll be really expensive. Yeah, that'll be a lot of the money. Yeah, like if people don't know, when you go to sponsors like that, if you're Liquid, you have a deck, and by the way, title sponsor is usually like the biggest one. That's like the ultimate. A bit like when I can't remember if they had it as the title, but I know for example, a few years back, Cloud9 had like Puma sponsorship. These are like the ones where. It's one thing people don't understand actually, Marta. You can have the same sponsor with a different org, but if they're just like a logo here, that might be like $10,000. Like the one that's like in the name might be millions a year. Like that could. I agree, by the way. That's why I also reference it, because this actually could impact the league, by the way, because the whole team could get affected by this. This could be like a massive amount of money they've lost.
Oh, it's like and they like Team Liquid, as you mentioned, it's like they've always had like the big brands. It's like they had the partnership with Marvel. They had it's like they were, I believe they were partnered with Coinbase before, like Coinbase has made like the big investment into esports. It's like a lot of the sponsorships, even something that I brought up, I remember, which I always thought was strange, like when orgs are sponsored by something and then the league is sponsored by something too.
Okay.
Because it got me thinking, because I remember I did like this Voice of Yamara episode with Sheep Esports, the Wulu person. Right. And I know that you watched it because I saw it, like you referenced it.
Some of the information. You don't know it. You inadvertently did me some work there, mate. Because you just let him talk and he said all stupid shit, didn't he? So it's great.
Because I asked him, like, what do you think about Travis being sponsored by Liquid, and then team like basically it was like Alienware sponsoring Travis, and then the league is sponsored by Alienware, and then this is sponsored by Alienware. It's like, what's happening here? It's like, what do you think about this? Conflict of interest, but there was nothing there. There was no substance there. But it just got me thinking, it's like they always had like the big brands. They did a good job of selling sponsorships, and in conjunction with like esports having very limited money available, and them, for example, expanding the roster now to 6-man, it's like you're pinching every penny. You know what you can do. Sure. You're trying to save money everywhere. And if they had an exit clause that frees them from like paying something in the midst of a year when you rely on that budget, that can have like extreme consequences. But I kind of wonder how that will play out in terms of the next years. I imagine the Team Liquid is well ran enough that they have enough coffers, enough money in the coffers to like keep them covered. But I think there's a lot of teams out there that would not be able to survive this at all if it happened like in the middle of a year, because It's like your budget is set, and then it's like you are there usually at a zero. You know, there's no surplus there. In most cases for esports, there's usually a negative. So I wonder how Team Liquid is going to manage this. It's going to look weird on the jersey. It's going to probably like tape, you know, the chest,
yeah, they'll have to.
the
We'll have
logo.
time to make all the new jerseys. Yeah,
make new jerseys straight off the bat. It's going to be tricky. It's going to look weird.
By the way, let's talk about LTA then, even though that wasn't technically LTA news because it was like Team Liquid, but it wasn't actually in league. But I do actually think, like I said, I think people would just be interested in all that detail about fans. That is a real trend that they do that weird thing where I've never understood it, by the way, Yamato. I mean, I do on one level. Here's why I do understand it on one level, right? I won't make too big a sidebar about this, but I actually think, even though people think this is an edgy opinion, it's actually just real. One of the reasons why, even though I understand the like social climate has changed, and obviously now there's giant sponsors, so you have to be careful what you say just for that reason alone. It's not really about do people get offended, it's about just the sponsor not like what you said. But even so, one thing I've always thought people went way too far with online is people act like when some person stupidly like insults someone else by saying a slur, that they're trying to like invoke all the worst things. So, like, for example, in this case, you can't, like, that guy's being a dick to that Japanese person, but he's not really, I imagine, happy that like the nuclear bombs were dropped on Japan, and he's like reveling in the idea that this guy's ancestors died. I don't think he's really doing. He's just being a dick, really. Like, the real problem with the online space, because I can tell you that when I came to the internet in the early 2000s, end of the 90s, this is what it was like. It was just like the Wild West of all naughty lost boys who were like weirdos who were just on the internet. So back then, I can tell you, one of the main reasons people used to say slurs and shit like that all the time was, one, to be edgy, because at the time, remember, you remember this, bro. That's why we had the like IRL. It's like, that's not, people thought the internet isn't real life. It's like an imaginary silly space. And back then, your teacher wasn't on the internet. The fucking police weren't on there. Like, there weren't all these people who would find out what people said. So one, it was like naughty kids almost in the woods, like, say this and saying some naughty things. And then secondly, when people are being toxic online and they're being horrible to each other, the problem is normally you have no information about the other person. You don't know who they are, where they're from, what they're like. So if people know any information, they're going to use that anyway. So like, I don't think most people doing that were even trying to be like hateful to people over like race and stuff. I think if they knew, for example, like what your mom looked like, they'd make fun of your mom. They're just trying to lash out and be a dick to you. What they're trying to do essentially, I know what I should say. They're trying to push your buttons. That's what they're actually trying to do. They're just trying to be like, right, I'm being toxic to you, you're being toxic to me, fuck you. Right, what button can I push that'll make you really mad? That's what I think most people are trying to do when they do that. So the problem in this case is you've mega fucked up in terms of the sponsor. Like, that's just beyond stupid. I mean, as I said, as soon as it's to an actual Japanese person, there's not even any way to wriggle out of that, mate. Like I said, if it had just been like a random game that had nothing to do with Japanese people, you could go, oh, that you just misunderstood. Like, he just meant essentially, like, oh, fuck my life or something. You could be a way to like argue that. You can't really argue this one. And then secondly, as I said, that's one of those areas where I do think Brazilians have gone way too far. This is why I've got experience, mate, way before this of what Carmine Corp fans would be like. Because what I know as a key principle about fan bases like this is it's not true that you're really toxic to them for no reason and then they respond by being toxic. It's the other way around. You know it is, mate. What happens is you say normal things, they go mental, and then after they've gone mental enough, you just think, fuck it, bombs are wind, and you just say, right, I'm going to be toxic too. They actually, in the same way as in League, when someone's toxic to you in the game, it makes it way more likely you're toxic back to them, doesn't it? Or type shit to them or fuck with them or something. If they hadn't have done that to you, maybe it never ever happened. So I will just say this is an example of where fan bases have to realise, like, even though for you personally there might not be a consequence, you're just a fan. They can't stop anything with you. It could actually affect your favourite teams. And in general, I would just say stay away from jokes like that. Like, the thing that the Brazilians don't think about in esports is, by the way, you know, like, the odds that someone who's playing in esports now actually was affected by Hiroshima, probably not that enormous. Like, it'd have to be someone quite far back in their family. Bro, 9/11 was like 24 years ago, like 23 and a half. Like, there could actually be someone you're messaging about that whose dad died in that, for fuck's sake. So I always just think fan bases, like, I know people don't want to talk about because theory fans are the reason the industry exists, but like, there are really negative elements in fan bases, mate. And like, you just can't ignore it. It just exists.
It's kind of in my mind what really opened the gates between like communities in terms of like languages. Like, that was a big separator in the past.
Oh, true.
Just a translate button on Twitter.
Oh, it did, yeah.
really,
the joke
really
is, The amount of like fucking ones that like we would never know what they're saying if we didn't have that button, right? We wouldn't go and put it
Yeah,
into.
yeah.
You wouldn't. By the way, I agree with you. It's the button. You wouldn't even put it into Google Translate. It's too much effort. But if you press that button, here's the joke. Though. I have a joke like this, Yamato, which is I always used to say that's why I used to love Russian fans because they would already write to me in Russian, and I once did an interview with like a Russian publication. And I said, so I'm fine because I don't know what they're saying, and I'm not going to click that button because that button basically just says insult my mother. Like you get the joke because it's like it's not. I said I learned eventually. It's never going to be something good when I click that translate button. Is it? So I'm not going to click it. So my joke about Russian fans was they're the perfect fan for me because I don't know what they're saying, and then they can just fucking listen to what I'm saying. I think we've got that relationship sorted. I'm with you, though. That translate button changed everything, mate. It did.
Just as a follow up too, because I think that's like the main thing. It's like in terms of how language is used and how people speak amongst them. It's like depending on the scenario in and the people that you're communicating, like the language often changes. It's like when communities interact, there's certain insults that are acceptable there, and then when it crosses over, it's like giga insulting to the other side. There's like certain things that you don't cross. For example, in Arabic, if you call someone any animal or you say anything about family, it's like the worst thing possible. Like that's like the worst thing possible. In Sweden, if you insulted someone Swedish, you like go after how they look or how they are, and in Arabic that would be like that's whatever, who cares? But if you insult, like it's like how insults are perceived and how people meme and how people like joke around with each other. It's like even it's like if I go back home and I'm talking with my friend group, it's like the way we fuck around with each other is like insult each other. This is not something that like would make sense to people. And I think the translate button kind of ruins those walls and barriers. And then it's like things that are not acceptable everywhere kind of seep through. And this is where I perceive like the most collisions most of the time. It's like, oh, the French community versus this community. Oh, it's like, oh, they have in-jokes that they do that are perceived as very insulting on this side, and then they attack, and then they do things that is very insulting on this side. And I think this is usually where like the big kind of divide occurs. And I imagine for the same from your side. I don't think that he is anti-Japanese, so to speak, but it's just when you are at the behest of sponsors, you gotta be as least offensive to as many people as possible. That's what the job is. It's like they're supposed to sell products to as many people as possible.
Yeah.
That's why Dom made the point, right, when the owner of Gigabyte Marines, GAM, when Trump won, he's like, oh, let's go, my God. And it's like, what the hell? It's like, you're the owner
that
of
is
this
a tactical mistake for sure, yes.
And
absolutely.
that's just stupid.
Yeah.
It's just dumb. It's like, regardless if it's your opinion or not, it's just stupid because you just cut the potential fan base of yours in half
You just associated all your sponsors with that opinion. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Unfortunately, you're at the behest of what where the money's from. It's like everyone is a slave to the dollar. It's just capitalism. That's what it is.
By the way, as a random aside, I shouldn't even really go into this because there's actually someone inside like real esports. But I did a whole video on my channel about it's one of those petty grievances. But there was a really hilarious outcome of that though, Yamato, which is there's this like Western Nutter in League of Legends. I don't even know if you know the name. It's just a random fan account where they'd actually gone. They were like, I think they're American. They'd gone to loads of live events and they'd picked GAM. You know when it's a woman, by the way. You know when they do that thing where they almost pick a team as though it was like a poor little abandoned puppy to like where they go like, oh, look at this shitty little teammate. I'm going to be a fan of them. Like, oh, look at you. Oh, like, you're not really even a fan because they're really good at the game. You just picked like, a weird curiosity. So this Western person had picked GAM as the team. I think maybe it was even when they'd had some results at Worlds or something. They'd picked that team as someone to be a super fan of and messaged a million times. They'd even gone to events, taken pictures with that CEO guy, even gotten a GAM jersey. And then when he did that tweet, they lost their mind on Twitter and like said how they'd never, they were not going to show it, but they said how they'd like never be a fan ever again of GAM and about how, cause he tweeted that thing about Trump, that he like didn't support women and like, just for like, the whole thing just went so far, Yamato, like beyond the pale, even though all the guy originally said was something like, love him or hate him, Trump is inevitable. That's like all he said. But this person took it as though he was like the biggest Trump supporter ever. It went so hard. It was so out of pocket. And the real the reason it's in my video is because, spoiler, this is someone who attacked me along similar lines for years, you know. So I just like used it as a way to highlight how mad they were. Basically, it was fucking hilarious, though. It was funny.
But I just imagine you had like your roof is just all the grudges you
Oh,
hold. That's the last thing you see before you go to sleep.
It's why I called the show Petty Grievances. I even acknowledge they're petty, but I tell you what, they are grievances, bro. We're gonna get into it. Yeah.
Oh, it's the money, man.
And you know this. Here's the thing. Some of my best videos are those. Some of my best videos are those ones, like the ones where I just tear Doublelift's entire arse apart and show how he's just full of shit and doesn't know what he's talking. Those are the best ones, mate. Those are my best work.
Oh, but man, Doublelift is in the public square, your conversation, you know? This is just a GAM fan standing on business, you know?
If you tweet at me publicly with an insult, you have chosen to engage with me publicly. I can now engage with you publicly. You know what I mean? Fair is fair.
That's fair. All right.
It's like a very, by the way, I've mentioned this a million times. People just ignore it. I'm one of the only people who has like an honourable approach to Twitter, Yamato, which is unless someone has directly been rude or insulting to or about me, I don't tag people on Twitter, mate. I don't do a tweet like, at LoL Nemesis is a fucking moron who did. Like, I don't do that. That's obnoxious as fuck. And now, to be fair, it's a bad example because he has actually talked about me in public, so I guess I could do that. But like, in general, I don't do that, mate. It's why the one time if you saw when I tagged Nuke like that to fuck with him, that's because he directly fucked with me over and over again, mate, and called me a dog and all shit. It's like, oh, you know what, mate? Bombs away then. You want to have fun? I'm your Huckleberry motherfucker. Shout out Val Kilmer. R.I.P.
See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, you know, be a pleb and don't.